Okay, so my account of what has been discussed so far, and it will be very selective, driven by my own, let me say, ideas about what the problems of the public have been in the past and should be and are today and will be in the future. And to start with a reflection about something what makes use of the title of the title of the book of Jürgen Habermas, which was quoted here times and again on this conference, the transformations of the public sphere. I have the impression that when we speak about the public sphere or public spaces, we speak always about transformations, about changes, about changes which can be described analytically by in methods of social science, but also which can be evaluated from a normative point of view. And I want to just briefly give my account of my understanding of the transformations which have occurred. I think that the term public and public sphere, public space, is strongly connected, inherently connected. That's what Ben said several times at this conference and beyond. Is inherently connected with democracy. So it's an inherently political concept. And political concepts are used to be polemical. That means they are always coined as opposites. What's that? As opposites to other, to its enemies, so to speak, to counter concepts. And I would say that at the very beginning, in the liberal model of the public sphere, the counter concept of public was the secret, the arcana imperii. That was the claim of an emergent society against the authoritarian rule of a monarch, autocratic monarch, against which moral and universalistic claims and ideas of reason were presented in the public sphere. So this was the primary idea of the public sphere in the liberal age. In the second stage, in the democratic model, as I would call it, public was no longer the sphere, the polemical anti-counter concept against arcana imperii, but was more about creating something like democracy. That means creating something like a people or a nation or a collectivity which is able to govern itself. So this constitutive role of the public, I think this was a bit underrated and was maybe a little bit too much neglected in this conference. The constitutive role of the public as a sphere in which a multitude of individuals kind of constitute themselves as a collectivity which is able to govern itself. So to achieve the quality of a collective subject. That was, in this respect, I think the marriage between reason and democracy, a reason and will. You know this distinction which was made in the previous session here. This marriage of reason and will was created at the very beginning of the democratic age. And then the third step, which I would identify, is the public sphere and public spaces in the age of mass democracy, where the nation is constituted, but the class division, so to speak, comes on the agenda. The class division of the society and the inherent contradictions and conflicts within the society have to be solved and needs an arena. They need a kind of a space in which these conflicts are dealt with, not necessarily solved, but in a way dealt with in a way which is compatible with democracy. And this is the transformation of, as it has been said, I think it was Norbert Elias who coined that, the transformation of society of individuals into a society of organizations. So here, the public sphere achieved the status of being the field in which the struggle for power became the main characteristic of the public sphere. So again, arguing and to use a more modern, more contemporary opposition of arguing and bargaining, that is in a way the same distinction between will and reason, which is a kind of leitmotif of the idea of public. And in this third stage of development of mass democracy, where public is the public sphere is a place for the struggle for power, this balance between arguing and bargaining, between will and reason, is it's very fragile. You need the public sphere in order to put forward your ideas as a party or as a group or as a social segment which strives for power, because democracy is always the rule of the few over the many. Whoever the few are, they are by party leaders, or they may be representatives of other segments of the population. But it's always the rule of the few over the many, and that needs some kind of legitimation. And even in this field where the struggle for power is a basic characteristic, the necessity for legitimation and for kind of presenting the argument for the reasonableness and for the legitimation of one's claims of the struggling parties for power is necessary. And that means that here let me say the opposition to the polemical the polemical opposition of the public is not the secrets, the arcana imperii, but it's the private. The private, namely, it's the struggle for drawing all power holders of society into a public sphere in order to make them visible. So the visibility and the transparency of the struggle for power, I think, is the basic concept and the basic message, so to speak, of the sphere of public. Now, what we see today, I think, and just our previous debates of Arco and his presentation clearly shows that we have a kind of reversal of the relationship between the private and the public, whereas in the past the struggle was always to get private powers, private issues into the public. Now, in order to kind of make them accountable and to subject them to the criteria of legitimation, today we see that there's a kind of development of drive of the private actors into the public. So the public has changed considerably and that's a question more than a clear claim and statement. The public may have lost its critical, so to speak, its critical thrust if private individuals and also private groups search, so to speak, the public sphere in order to present themselves. So, in other words, the question is whether the public has become a kind of affirmative sphere which has lost its basic critical function for the legitimation of political power. Now, to turn now to the other, rather than looking backwards, looking now forwards, I would just briefly mention that there are, I think, three problems with which we are confronted when we speak about the public sphere today. Let me say three challenges which have been discussed here, and or which should be which are maybe not sufficiently enough discussed. That is, first of all, we have a complete change of the structure of the public sphere by what we call globalization. So the territorial boundedness of the public sphere, as it had been the case in its inherent connection with democracy, and democracy being national democracies, so this has been dissolved. There's a disconnection with which we have to struggle as new transnational, international spheres of interaction and of power, and of the exercise of power have occurred, which need kind of balancing through what traditionally was the function of the public sphere. So this is a challenge with which we are confronted. The second is the multicultural character of society. So the ethnic, religious, and cultural, one could say fragmentation, or at least differentiation of modern societies, which means that the very idea of one coherent public, in the horizon of which reasonable arguments are exchanged, so arguing takes place, and although there's still also bargaining, there's also a struggle for power, but still there's always this idea that there's one homogeneous, more or less coherent, let me say, coherent set of criteria according to which power is scrutinized. This, I think, is being undermined through the fragmentation of modern society. And the third, of course, is what was, of course, extensively discussed on this conference here, namely the digitalization of information, so the internet as a new medium of mass communication. So I don't have to say much about that. Well, of course, also due to the restriction of time. Let me rather say that what I want to present as a problem, as a question, namely that given this, as I say, the fragmentation of modern societies, I think there is we have to focus our analysis and our attention to the struggle for the public space by minority groups which no longer appeal to a general public, but rather create their own public space and their struggle for the recognition of their specific and particular public space. To give you a few examples, the first one is a nasty one, a negative one. You all know, well, at least those who live in Germany, and particularly those who live in the region of Berlin-Brandenburg, we have this problem of so-called no-go areas created by the conquest of certain spaces by racist and xenophobic groups. So they, in a way, they struggle for the abolition of the public space as a space which is freely accessible and for everybody, and accessible for people who meet as strangers, not only as strangers, but also of people who meet there as being as diverse as the world is diverse. And this has to do with migration and with the multicultural character of the society. So this is a political issue where the struggle for public space plays a major role in at least in German politics. Then the second one, I think of the now in the meantime internationally recognized and internationally visible so-called Christopher Street marches worldwide, where a certain discriminated group, a formerly discriminated group, namely the gay community, they kind of conquer the public space in order to show their view of their lifestyle, so to speak, and their view on, well, also on politics, but not only on politics. So this is a kind of a new constitution of politics by a particular group, and that's not just a national, but a worldwide phenomenon. Then a third one, and that was addressed already several times from a different perspective, the struggle about the veil of Muslim women, or even for the burqa. You know, the burqa is the most radical use of a garment where the whole person the whole woman is concealed. And I have good friends, left liberal friends, who say, I won't tolerate that women with burqas walk in German streets. So in other words, the struggle, and I don't take sides on this issue. I want to show that certain groups, and ever more, I believe in the future, minorities will struggle for the conquest of the public space, for the presentation of their view and of their lifestyle, of their identity, in order to make that known to the well. I wonder whether they really address a general public, or whether we are already in a situation where there is no such thing like an overarching public sphere, in which now minority groups can present themselves as minorities. The question is whether they claim to be absolutely, so to speak, self-related, as claiming that their world is the world. That's a question, and that's also criticism, and that's where I see a problem. It has to do with the fragmentation of modern society, so that the public, in a way, is also a victim of this fragmentation and ceases to be a forum of arguing and bargaining, and rather becomes of the self-presentation of identities. I personally think that's a dangerous development, but maybe there are other views are certainly possible. Last remark. I think that, and now this has to do with the future of governance. This is also part of our topic here. I have the idea that I have the impression that certain concepts or certain criteria for what would be a good governance have been mentioned on this conference, which are connected with the concept of the public sphere. So, in other words, that there's still the idea that the concept of legitimacy, accountability, transparency, deliberation, participation. These are concepts which have been discussed here, and I don't mean to say that they are all compatible with each other. So there are tensions between them, but still these are concepts which I think are inherently connected with the idea of public sphere. What I missed, and then I will stop with that. What I missed is a concept which was addressed, but in a quite different manner by Martin Heyer when he spoke about representation. I don't mean, where is he, by the way? What was it? Well, I don't mean representation, I mean representation. Representation meaning that, let me say, the whole, well, that's very emphatic, I admit. This is a bit emphatic idea, but in this respect I'm quite conservative. The very idea that representation means that the whole of society is somehow represented, is embodied, is symbolized by both individuals, but also by symbols, also by institutions. So there are different ways of how a society as such can be represented, and this representation is as much inherently connected with public sphere as it is true with democracy. So the idea of representative and representation as only being as occurring only in a public sphere was something which was really missing, and I wonder whether this emphatic claim for deliberative democracy is not in a kind of contradiction with the very idea of representation, because deliberation means always you exclude those who do not deliberate, who are not able or not willing or are excluded from by social barriers, cultural barriers or whatnot, and by the fragmentation to which I referred. So, in other words, I just want to throw into the debate and challenge the idea of deliberative, the authority of deliberative democracy and deliberation through the concept, the old-fashioned but still I think valid concept of representation, which of course raises all these questions about transnational public spheres and how does that work and also in a fragmented multicultural society. So I don't deny everything what I said before. I just want to say this is a tension of concepts between I and my reflections about the public sphere move from one end to the other without having a clear point of view. And I stop with that because I have no clear point of view to that. Thank you.
Thank you.